Next up, we've got our other panel. We're talking about how brands can innovate and grow using NFTs. Come on up, you guys. Please welcome Stephen, Sharad, Danny, and Can. Come on up. Give them a warm welcome, please. Thank you.
My name is Sharad Agarwal. I'm from Dubai. We are at an NFT conference. Let's make some noise, guys.
Yeah.
Woo.
How many of you have been to Dubai? Raise your hands, please. Amazing. The center of gravity in this space is shifting to Dubai, and I mean it. So if you haven't been there, this is the time to be in Dubai. All the action is happening there. Today I have amazing panelists with me, and we are going to have a conversation about how brands can innovate and use NFTs as a sales channel to grow their business. So a little bit more about myself. I run a digital agency for maybe last 26 years. So I'm basically a Web 1 guy, which makes me one of the oldest in the room. But I transitioned to Web 3 last year. And the good thing is that, it's a level playing field. There are no experts. Everybody is learning as we go along. So feel free to participate, engage with us. And I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves. Stefan, you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, and hello, everybody. My name's Stefan Kovach. I run a Web3 advisory service called Rarer Things. I've been in the space since about 2017, and for the last 2 years, I've been running this agency, and we focus in kind of 3 key areas. One is gaming and gambling. That was my Web 2 background. The other is fashion and kind of lifestyle, and then the third space is in sport, and particularly within tennis. So we work with lots of big brands in each of those areas, and we kind of help them develop a holistic strategy, and then we work with others, and we find partners to execute against those strategies.
Super. Jan, you want to go next?
Hello, everybody. Nice to have you here and to having me. I run also an agency based in Germany. We are advising brands and building strategies for entering the Web3 space. This now for more than 4 years. And for example, we are also in touch with legacy brands like Mercedes-Benz. We've created the first Genesis drop and piece to really create a proof of concept because the first question that was asked about the whole topic was, can we really build on that and can we really earn money with the whole NFT space? I'm going to talk later on a little bit more during the speech about the NFG project. It's the non-fungible G-class, the first pilot I just spoke about. It's today at 5:45. Would love you to join, and don't want to go too deep into detail because I'm going to tell later on a little bit more about what we are doing and so on, and
Thank you.
just use the time to
Let's go to Danny. You don't look anything like that.
I don't?
All right, go ahead.
My name's Danny. My lead Chainstack's NFT team. So we are a blockchain services infrastructure company. So I'm constantly working with any sort of DApp or brand that wants to build with NFTs. So really focused on the technology kind of behind it and making sure that we have the best NFT dApps in the ecosystem.
Great. So now you know our panelists. I'm approached by a lot of brands almost on a weekly basis who want to get into the Web3 space. They say we want to build in the metaverse, we want to do digital twins, we want to do experiential shopping. And I always ask them this one question: what is your metaverse strategy? And most of these brand leaders don't have an answer. So I think to be successful in this space, you have to start by crafting a strategy. Stefan, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, very much so. So I think strategy has been slightly loosely used term within the space, but obviously when you're engaging with traditional legacy businesses and big brands, that their businesses revolve around very clear strategies. And when we work with big organizations or big brands, the first thing that we really ask is, what are you trying to achieve with Web3? Often, actually, even before that, there's a massive educational piece that needs to be kind of understood in terms of what the technology is and what the technology can do. But understanding your objectives and understanding the audience that you're targeting is absolutely critical. And I think we can't, we need to be very cognizant that the space is still very nascent and the audiences that we're talking about are still very small. So we haven't got to that point of kind of crossing the gap in terms of adoption. We're moving there, and it's great to see everybody who's working towards that in terms of the user experience, in terms of education, etc. So being really clear on objectives, being really clear on the audience that you're trying to target, and then having a view on use cases that make sense for that industry. So for fashion, for instance, which is very forward-leaning towards Web3, there's a number of clear use cases that the industry is looking at, and I think the smarter brands are thinking about this holistically. They're thinking about payment options through crypto, and they're looking into the future. They're thinking about it from a marketing point of view. They're thinking about it from a product point of view, because go figure, where's the future generation? They're in Roblox, right? And they will likely move over into decentralized metaverses, and they'll probably want ownership on the fashion items that they own. There's marketing play, there's in real life play, augmented reality, etc. So for me, it's always about looking at it holistically, and it's always going back to a very clear set of objectives and a clear target audience that that brand wants to engage with.
Jan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think also it's very important for brands to have a clear vision on how they could enter the space and also like develop it in the future. What, like you said, they should have a clear vision and clear goals on that, because I feel like a lot of brands are building now own metaverses or are building in metaverses. And the most important thing about that is how do you generate and make sure that you will have traffic in the future? I mean, having just 30 people on average at time in the metaverse that you just build is not enough. So how do you engage them in the future? How do you like make sure that there is a happening and it's not just a hype thing for a marketing perspective? It will be a sustainable thing, a sustainable place to join and to interact and to build real business. So I think this is something that you really have to keep in mind and to be aware of.
I think a big thing about, I totally agree with what you guys are saying, but I think a big thing about brands and why they want to start growing and using NFTs has to deal with the fact of customer loyalty, right? Like a brand, whether it's a clothing brand, shoe brand, car brand, doesn't matter what it is, ultimately their goal is to, get more customers and then also retain those customers. I think there's a statistic that like over 80% of companies agree that retention of customers is cheaper than new acquisition of customers. So how do you keep the current customers interested in your brand and make sure that they keep coming back and back and back, and you don't have to spend excess money on trying to acquire new customers?
Yeah, cool. So I want to circle back to Dubai, because Dubai is the first government on the planet that has come up with this unique concept, which says that GDP will not be the measure of an economy anymore. It'll be GMP, gross metaverse product. So here is a country with a big idea, small country with a big idea. And the second thing that they announced at what we call the Dubai Metaverse Assembly, which happened at this Museum of the Future. You must have seen the iconic building. The government has announced that every government department has to shift from the current boring websites that they have to immersive 3D experiences. And they have been given a deadline, 30th of June next year. 24 government departments have to pivot. And if certain head of a government department does not perform, he goes on a long vacation. They mean business. And I think once governments take this initiative to participate in implementing new technologies, this will give a jump start to the whole industry. So I'm going to come back to Stefan. I mean, we've heard of so many case studies, right? We know the Bored Apes, we know the Tiffany pendant that they created in collaboration with them. We've talked about community, community, community. I'm a big fan of building communities. So I'm going to go to my panel and ask them, what does it take to build a successful Web3 community contrasted to the old ways that we were building communities? Over to you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, an example I'll use is a project that I worked on earlier this year with the Australian Open, so the tennis tournament. I was working with the management team, and we kind of determined around about this time last year, a little bit earlier, because of COVID, that actually people wouldn't be able to go to the event. Okay, the Australian borders would be closed, and actually within Australia, the state borders would be closed. And sure enough, come January, that was the case. So we decided that we would take a strategy, which was if the world couldn't come to Melbourne Park, we would take Melbourne Park to the world. And we built Melbourne Park in Decentraland. And we aim to engage with both the crypto community, so Decentraland's community, and then the broader community beyond that by also issuing an NFT project called AO Art Balls, which we created 7,557 tennis balls unique to the fuzz, and then we applied art to that, and then actually we linked a 19 by 19 centimeter plot on the court to each ball randomly, and then the winning shot from each game, if you had that plot, you would receive a hologram on your ball. And what we were trying to do there was engage with the crypto audience using tennis and building a community. So we built out a Twitter channel, we built out a Discord channel. We also wanted to see if we could engage with the broader tennis audience and educate that audience. We had a different drop, which was using much more of a Web 2 kind of interface. You didn't need cryptocurrency, you didn't need a wallet, etc. And we were also looking to bring them into the community. So I think, what we learned from that was it was much easier to do it with the crypto community than it was a mass market community, even with an easy product. And I think the other thing we learned was, a community is an always-on thing. It's a big commitment for a brand. And for something like the Australian Open, which happens 2 weeks of the year, and maybe you've got a month of kind of playtime 2 weeks in advance, there's other tournaments that take place down there, you then got the rest of the year to work with that community and expand that community out. So I think communities are super interesting. I think they are at the heart of Web3. But I think for brands, they've got to be really careful. They've really got to think through the commitment that they're making. Because it can be very big payback, but it can also be a lot of work involved.
Yeah. Your experience?
Yeah, 100%. I also think community building is one of the essential instruments for Web3. But like you said, could also be risky if you don't set up things right. If I think about creating a community as a brand, which exists already, I also come to the point to think about co-creation and co-ownership, which of course offers the possibility to get people in the community engaged in a different way, and really to give them the idea of being a closer part of the brand and what kind of projects or products they develop in the future. But of course, you cannot give that out of hand 100% or straight away, otherwise it would cause a risk. But I still think those kind of things, like I said, co-creation, co-ownership are very, very strong elements and instruments, and I definitely like to build strategies on that.
No, I completely agree. But the thing that just sprung to mind as well there is, for brands, often as a first step, looking at a collaboration with an existing community is a lighter touch way actually to learn. You've got to make sure that the values of the brand are perfectly aligned with the values of the community that you're going to collaborate with. And you have to do something meaningful. It can't be a money grab. It has to be a genuine brand fit and then a genuine value add into that community.
Yeah, if I may just add to that, I'll come to you, Danny, in a sec. I think, in my opinion at least, in the future, brands will not be judged by their market cap. They will be judged by their community cap. So this is the right time for leaders to start investing in building a community first. Don't spend too much time on the build in the metaverse or the kind of NFT drops or the loyalty programs that you're planning, start by building a community. And a lot of big brands have built very well, but they have no people, right? Who do you sell to? So I do think that a community-first approach is good for brands. And Danny, you want to supplement that or add something?
Yeah, I just think it's important when you're building community that you have to keep in mind that it can't be for money, right? You can't be launching these NFTs to try to increase revenue. I think that's an end result, and you'll get there if you do it correctly. But your biggest marketers, and they'll be for free, will be your biggest supporters. And they'll go out and they'll do all your marketing for you. And in order to get them to do that, you have to reward them, right? I mean, the Australian Opens can look a lot different from a clothing brand or from anyone else. But you have to figure out who is your community, what do they want, and you have to try to line that up as much with your roadmap so they could go out and they'll be the marketing, and ultimately, you'll get more customers, and it'll be successful, more people will get involved, and down the line, you'll get more money. But companies cannot be, I'm launching this NFT to add ARR to my numbers this year, essentially.
And I think it's also important to try and convert your consumers to what I call fansumers, right? You need to create fans, people who will be your brand ambassadors, who will be talking about you even when you are not in the space. So I think there's a real upside, and we don't have to worry too much about technology. I don't even think using NFT is a good idea as a word to describe what you're doing. Probably you have to come up with something as easy as digital collectibles, right? So there's a lot of, I would say, jargon that's being bandied around in our industry. On Web3 alone, we created a glossary, and there were 250 terms. You don't expect a normal consumer to understand all that lingo. So end of the day, in my opinion, you got to keep it simple. Know your audience, build for them, keep them engaged, and community managers need to be listening a lot more, because I deal with a lot of community managers and they talk all the time. They don't listen. And all the good ideas are coming from the members of the community. I'm going to bounce to Stefan. The clock there says we have 5 minutes. So I want you to, top of your head, which is the brand that stands out for you in terms of being successful in the NFT space? Like they, are successful in engaging with their audience or growing their brand or their sales. Are there any success stories out there?
Yes, I think there are. I mean, I think Nike has played a blinder in terms of its acquisition of Artifact. That is not an organic approach. That's obviously an acquisition. And personally, I think they've probably outplayed Adidas in that regard, which is taken more of an organic approach. And from what I can see, Nike are letting Artifact kind of get on with it because they get the space. And Benoit, to your point, understands that the value of that business is entirely about the community and giving that community power, enabling that community to co-create with them and enjoy value themselves, right? So everybody is benefiting from a stakeholder perspective. From a more organic approach, I actually really like what Budweiser's doing. I think Budweiser's done something really interesting in terms of, they did the Heritage Can collection initially. They've remained very true to the community that they formed. They've done a number of other drops since. They've always rewarded that community first. They've always put them first forward. They've done interesting collaborations with the likes of Zrun. Very interesting, very strong kind of brand fits. And now they're moving into the World Cup, and they have a dynamic NFT collection, again, rewarding the core community who've been with them from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Jan, success stories?
Well, I think Nike is doing pretty well, but I would also say Adidas, because what they are building, Adidas, made the first move in the space, and Nike had to do something about it, right? And what they are building is like a whole new world together. So there was, ever since like the competition between, I feel it like that, between Nike and Adidas, And like they onboard people together, no matter what you like, Nike or Adidas or both. I like both. And I think the way how they picked the right partners in the space, the right brands out of the NFT space. It was Pixelwald with Punk's Comic. It was G-Money, which is like he has a massive influence and does great stuff in the space. And also the Bored Ape connection. I think that was the great pick of Adidas, like discovering new brands and being brave to take that step. I think this should be honored, and I think they're also building great, even if things taking time a bit. But hey, it's a traditional company, and yeah, things need to be like developed. It takes time.
If I may just add to, because you mentioned Nike and Adidas, I don't know if our audience knows this story, but this is a true story. Nike and Adidas fight during the day for market share. They compete. But do you know what they do in the night? They share the statistics, the sales statistics, because they want to grow the market. This is collaboration at its best. They are baking a bigger pie, and they are going to have a larger share of the cake. So I call it Web 2 by day, which is competition, and Web 3 by night, which is collaboration. Coming to you.
So I don't think there's any specific brand that has successfully innovated with NFTs yet. I think it's just too early, right? I mean, there's a lot of hype about Starbucks, Odyssey, a few others. I just think it's more of a 5 to 10 year play, as opposed to 6 months from now, great, the floor price went up, or you got some more users. I think it's too early to tell what's truly been successful. Something that I've liked has been what Paramount has done, specifically with Nickelodeon and then also Care Bears, right? They leveraged a Web3 native platform called Recur to essentially manage everything for them. They just kind of used their IP, but they tapped into pre-existing Web3 communities. They got new people in via that were fans of these shows, like Hey Arnold. And so far, it's been relatively successful in terms of attention, and then also floor price, if you want to judge it by that. But again, I think that this is something that we need to evaluate on a 3 to 5 year plan, and we can't evaluate 6 months from now that it's been successful.
All right. Thank you, guys. The countdown clock says 8, 7, 6, 5. We are almost done. Thank you, panelists, for being here. Shout out for all the panelists, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here.